Hey guys, what's up? And today we're talking about why pre-support files fail or just generally don't work out of the box. And this can be for multiple reasons. But we're going to cover some of the basic reasons why some pre-support files don't work. And yeah, we're going to go over some of that with you guys today. And hopefully this explains some of it and gives you guys some insight as to what kind of detail goes into pre-supporting a file and why sometimes it can be a very tricky business indeed. So let's dig right in. As we dig into this file, this is the Werebear from Cripple God Foundry, and this file, we were lucky enough, they do provide us with some Lychee Slicer files. And you have a bit more of a chance there when the company provides you with an actual Lychee file versus just a static STL. You have a bit more to work with because you can actually edit the supporting. You can analyze the islands yourself, which in this particular build, I believe unsupported were about, I want to say about 96 islands. Initially when I opened the file, I think it detected 87. But I actually detected more when I ran the scan myself, and then as I did some hand scans layer by layer, I did find some more. So there were over 100 islands on this piece. It's a lot, and a lot of them weren't supported. So if you were essentially to pop this guy onto your plate as he is, like this, well, from the Lychee Slicer file, he definitely won't work. You're going to lose those islands. Lots of those parts are going to blur out, you're going to lose detail, he's just not going to look great. So this would be considered a partial fail. And so we kind of crossed into this conversation, and this comes up a lot, is why do pre-supports fail? Why do I hand support my files? Well, I don't hand support everything. Most of Cripple God stuff I will actually use out of the box, but I'm always going to island check it, always going to go over it by hand. There's big surface areas on a lot of the solid pieces, and you want to make sure that the supporting is there and it's good. Otherwise, you're going to lose that mini to the soup, and he's just going to become a pancake piece, or, parts of him are going to fail, and you don't want that. It's just a waste of time and a waste of material. And then you got to clean a vat, and then you got to take out little, it's just, again, doing this procedure where you kind of check the files yourself is important. Now, if you have pre-supported files and they just come to you as STLs, throw them away. Take the file and support it yourself. You are actually better off using auto support than you are trusting some random STL in Lychee Slicer. And the reason that is because Lychee Slicer does not play well with STL files that have been created and supported. It really doesn't. Wish I was kidding. It doesn't like it. It treats the supports as part of an object. It finds islands on supports. Which, when you read up and down on the 2D slice, you're like, okay, well, that actually does look like an island. It's not, because it's part of a support, but the slicer doesn't know, because the support is a static part of the model at that point. So what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a mass model that just has supports kind of built into it. There's no editing them, there's no moving them around or changing them or removing any. So always better if you can get the native file format for whatever slicer you're working in. And for Lychee, that's going to be your Lychee Slicer file or your LYS or LYT files. And I highly recommend that. If you can get that for your pre-supports, great. Then at least you have something to work with. In the example of the Cripple God Foundry files, we have the Lychee Slicer files. We can go in, we can edit them, we can fix the island issues, we can correct the files, anything that we see is missing or that needs to be updated, or just something we don't like, it's not supported the way we think it should be in one particular area, we might modify it. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody, it's just the way we do it versus the way someone else does it. And that's why supporting differs so differently between different different companies and different people, is because the supporting style is going to differ just based on what you are used to working with, your experiences in supporting. And I think that's important to note, and why pre-supported files will have a problem, because a lot of times when I build pre-support files for customers, it's based on my architecture, but it is also kind of taken into consideration of the fact that whatever architecture they're working off of. So I do take that into consideration. And if they're working with Lychee Slicer, they're definitely going to get a Lychee file back from me. If they're not, if they're working with Qi2 or something like that, I can actually arrange and give them the Qi2 files and stuff like that. So there are options. For some reason, it seems to either be an STL or a Lychee file, and the Lychee files are getting more common, but it's still kind of rare to see that everyone will offer that. It's nice to see when it is offered, though, for sure. I definitely take note of those. As you can see, models like this have a huge amount of islands because of the fur. That's usually what creates it. You have this texture, and that textured area often creates islands, which will then, just because of its orientation of kind of being face up and down, straight up off the plate like that with its feet facing down, the curls of all that fur are going to catch an island every time they kind of come to an apex at the bottom. And you could try tilting them in different directions, and that may actually increase surface area on print layers, so that may not be a good idea for different reasons. I really don't mess with the orientation too much on these files from Cripple God Foundry. I will just mess with the islands. I'll usually move around 1 or 2 supports at the most, and then that's it. They're good to go. I might add a couple supports here and there where I feel like maybe something is under supported, like their feet, or I'll just do a contact sweep and make sure that everything is touching. And if I find anything that's kind of off-centered, I'll usually just move it. So it's really just more of a finessing thing. It's not even me critiquing their particular supporting. It's more of just going, well, it could be anybody's supporting, and I'm just going to, fix it to my liking pretty much before I put it onto my printers. And that's pretty much the way I roll with everything. And you should be too. When you start out with this, I understand you're not going to understand every little particular thing about supporting, and so therefore maybe, you're going to go, well, I'm just going to trust these guys because they know way more than me. Fair enough, and they might. But you're still going to find failures in pre-supported files. And I'm not really sure 100% of the time what the issues are, but we have even, personally, I've worked with some really big companies I won't name that you're like, all right, these have to work, right? You guys have been doing this for like 3-4 years. You run them and 90% of them fail. And I really don't, I couldn't put my finger on why some of those things did happen. And it was more or less just like, all right, well, how do we fix them instead of just harboring over the fact that some of them didn't work out. So, again, it's pre-supporting is not all created equal. I've discussed this a few times, but the pre-supporting thing it's difficult because when you start out in this hobby, if you're doing it as a hobby, pre-supporting might be something you're counting on because you don't really fully understand. Okay, I don't really know how to support. I don't know how to do this yet. And then these pre-supported files are not exactly what they advertise themselves to be. They don't print out perfectly. They're not made for every particular configuration, and you wind up with a lot of failures and wasted resin, wasted time, broken vats, broken printers. And I hear a lot of these horror stories, and it's sad because it probably breaks some people out of the hobby. Like, they don't want to do it anymore. They're like, I'm done. Because it would kind of dissuade me, if I got nothing but failures up front, and I'd be like, all right, well, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun. You want something to work. You don't want it to keep breaking. Definitely not something you want to keep doing. Keep failing. It's like the mouse that hits the button that shocks it. It's definitely going to stop after a while, right? Anyway, I think it's important to mention that there are a few companies out there that really do pre-supporting well. Cripple God Foundry does a great job. They do supply the Lychee files, and they do give the users the option of messing with those Lychee files. And in most cases, their files are really good. we rarely ever have issues. And when we do, it's more or less just going to be related to other issues, not necessarily their supports. Again, I point out the fact that when you open up the file, it's full of islands, but it's because it's a Lychee file. I don't think when they do this, they don't do the island searches for these files. I think they leave them this way, so they kind of leave it up to the end user to take that file and then kind of do that that last island search before you kind of do the publishing on the file. But if you were to take this file as it was and just print it, it would definitely not work. I mean, it would work. You'd probably get a print, but you get a lot of missing details where some of the stuff would either pancake off or just float off into your vat, and then you're going to have all these chaotic little random bits of plastic kind of floating in your vat, and that's definitely not going to be good for anybody. So, yeah, definitely important to make sure that everything is copacetic before you print. And again, this is one of the reasons why we just do the in-depth checks that we do. And so, doing the little island supporting and stuff for these files, not a big deal. In most cases, it takes me about 10-15 minutes tops, and I'll just run right through them, and boom, done, ready for printing. We run our test prints, everything looks good, then we start running the actual prints for customers if we have them. Otherwise, the files just, they get saved and get stored for when we do get a particular order for that particular print. So really, in closing, guys, what I'm trying to say here is I think that pre-supported files can work really well. There's a couple resources out there. There's a couple Reddit threads devoted to this where there are people that have talked about the different grades of pre-supported files. So definitely do look for that. Go check that out. There's some communities out there that are kind of dedicated to this, to kind of making companies stand up for what they make. And I think it's kind of important to say, hey, you know what? Maybe these folks should be held a little bit more accountable for their pre-supporting work, because if you're counting on this to work and then there's just a continuous number of people who are reporting failure on it, well, I mean, somebody needs to call you out on that. That's not fair. It's not even fair to say it's pre-supported at that point. So I think we do need to recognize that. We do need to kind of see that, and we do need to kind of call that out where there's a problem. But overall, I think you can overcome the issue of pre-supports if you really just take the matter of supporting into your own hands. Just learn how to do the supporting. It's not that hard to do it. You will eventually learn how to really wrap your head around it, and you're going to get the ideas really quickly on how to support, where to balance the weight, orientation, that sort of thing is all going to come very naturally to you after a while, and you're going to see, like, I don't need to worry about pre-supported files anymore, and you're going to prefer to hand support the files that are going to give you a hard time. Anyway, I wish you guys the best of luck in all your printing endeavors. I hope everything you print comes out great. And if you do use pre-supported files and you have good luck with them, then bless you. I mean, more power to you. If it works, great. We do have a couple that we do like, and we do count on. Cripple God Foundry is one of them. Printed Obsession has some very good pre-supported files. So there are a few companies that we work with that do actually we will use their pre-supports. Otherwise, for the most part, I do like to hand support most of the files we work with, just because I want to see how they're going to break away and how I'm going to need to handle them during cleanup. Anyway, that's all for today, guys. I really appreciate y'all watching this episode. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, please drop us a comment, sub, like, hit that bell if you want notifications on episodes we do release, because they do come out a couple times a week, and we do appreciate you guys watching. As always, thanks again. See you all soon.